Welcome back to She's Got Game. On this week's episode, I'm sitting down with Adrienne Adhami, author, entrepreneur, and wellness expert. We are talking about making decisions that matter and how to clear that headspace when we have so much constant choice around us. Adrienne also talks us through FOBO, fear of a better option, and how to make sure we don't struggle through life with that silent dissatisfaction. I love this episode and a lot of the practical strategies that Adrienne gave us to take away to help improve our lives day to day. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoy. Adrienne Adhami, welcome to She's Got Game. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to start with quick fire questions, okay? So nice and easy to get into it. What was your favourite sport to play growing up?
Favourite sport to play? Netball? Athletics.
What race did you tend to run in with athletics?
200.
Love that. Which book felt easiest to write, Power Hour or Decisions That Matter?
Power Hour.
Why?
Because the first time you do anything, I think I had like a naive optimism and ambition. Oh, cool, I'm going to write a book. And second time you do something, you just know a lot more. So I feel like that made it. And the pressure felt higher in a way. The stakes felt a little higher. First time it was an achievement just to write a book. Second time around, it was like, there's a sales target.
Yeah. We have goals here, guys.
Yeah.
What is one thing about writing that they don't tell you?
That writing the book is the first part, and then once it's published, the real work begins. So self-promotion, more writing about the topic, talking about the topic, especially now in the modern world, there's podcasts, there's radio, there's all sorts of things that for an extrovert like me, it's okay. I think some writers probably just want to stay in their little writing cave and do the writing, and then they're suddenly thrust out into the world and they have to self-promote, which is quite tough.
Do you prefer more of the writing side of things or like the promotion and the speaking afterwards after you've written the book?
It definitely depends. There's elements of the writing process that I absolutely love, and there's also elements of the writing process that I find incredibly challenging, and I sit there going, oh my gosh, when's this going to be done? It's a very consuming process, so it feels like it takes over, and you have to make I had to make a lot of compromises and sacrifices to kind of really make sure I got that done. So I was looking forward to it being out in the world so I could do things like this, share my ideas, talk about it, but then as I said, it also comes with that layer of pressure, maybe from myself but also from others, because suddenly your words and your work are out there for everyone to read and hopefully enjoy, and in some ways I guess judge and score, and that's quite scary.
Which one, just out of interest, took longer to write?
Decisions That Matter took a lot longer. I'd say it took me 3 times longer.
Oh, wow.
Much more research, was much more due diligence. I think because the topic is so, decision making is such a complex topic, and there's so many variables to think about, from psychology to just so many things to consider, that I spent a lot more time on this one.
And you also do some public speaking.
I do.
Do you have a pre-public speaking routine?
Kind of, yeah, I do. So my pre-public speaking routine in an ideal world, obviously it doesn't always go to plan, but an ideal world is get to bed early, always get an early night. You know the benefits of sleep, but being sleep deprived is not what you want. So get to bed early. I have kind of like a capsule wardrobe for speaking gigs. I don't have a capsule wardrobe for life, but I do for speaking gigs, because it just saves time and effort and energy with decision making. We've all been there where you're like trying on a million things, pulling everything out of your wardrobe saying, I've got nothing to wear. So I just have these kind of set things, which I'm like, if I'm doing a speaking gig, I know what I'm wearing. So that's done. So early bedtime, I know what I'm wearing. And then I'd say I always arrive at least an hour early to do a speaking gig, at least. In an ideal, again, I'll be there 2 hours before. So whenever the organisers, especially if it's a conference and there's lots of different, stages, or where to get your mic, or people will say, oh, if you're on stage at 2, please can you arrive by 1:30? And I'm like, seriously? So I'll get there with loads of time so that I feel calm and ready.
And I feel like public speaking is one of those things that people are petrified of doing. Did it scare you when you first did it?
Yes, it did. And I say that because now, as someone who does a lot of public speaking and I enjoy it and I don't really tend to feel nervous anymore, you still feel an excitement, hopefully, but it's not the same as feeling nervous. So yes, I did. And I think it's important for people to know that you can feel afraid of doing something, you can feel nervous, you can have your hands shaking, holding the paper. But if you keep doing something, if you keep practicing, deliberate practice, repetition, intentional practice, you'll improve, and you'll improve so much that you'll look back, like even something like a podcast, or you'll look back at, say, when you get to episode 100 compared to episode 1, and that improvement is so huge. So for anyone who finds public speaking hard, but maybe they want to do more of it, know that you'll get better, but that you have to be intentional about the deliberate practice.
There's something that I found it so reassuring. I remember one time this guy was giving a speech to a lot of us and he didn't seem nervous at all, and I looked at his hand and I could see it was shaking, and I was like, unless I'd seen that, I would not have noticed he was nervous. And then he said, you have to excuse me, I'm really nervous. And I was like, I honestly could not even tell. And that was so reassuring. It's like when you're up on that stage, if you're feeling the nerves, you feel like you're shaking, no one else can tell.
No one can tell.
And I feel like that really changed the game for me with then delivering speeches or whatever in front of a public audience.
Yeah.
That really helped. What is your favourite project that you've worked on to date?
Oh my gosh, that is such a difficult question because there's been so many. I mean, do I have to give one? Can I give you a couple?
You can have 3.
Oh, wow, great. I have 3. Okay, so I worked at a fitness technology startup called Fit. It was, I worked there for 4.5 years. It was a really exciting time for digital fitness, online fitness. You know, it's completely changed now, the landscape. But back when Fit first started and when I first joined, I was the 13th employee, which in a startup, you know, it was really exciting. It grew to, I think at one point, maybe 60 or 70 employees. And the pandemic, of course, meant that everyone in the fitness industry switched to online at-home fitness. It really started to really take off, and it was just an really exciting place to work. I met so many wonderful people. I learned so much in that 4.5 years from everything. Working in a startup, regardless if it's in the fitness industry or a different industry, you can learn so much because you're just all in the mix. So you can learn from, for example, the app developers. You can learn from the brand and the marketing team. You can learn from the CFO about finance, investment, runway, raising money, whatever it is you want to learn about. I'm a sponge, and I went in every week. It felt like I was basically learning like a business degree, but getting paid for it and enjoying it. And just, it was so great. So always have such fond memories of all the things that I did working at Fit. What else? Other projects that I've enjoyed working on. So I was asked to be part of an advisory board for an automotive company, so a big car company that everybody will know who they are. But it was, again, I'm someone who've had a very multifaceted, I'd say unconventional career. So being asked to be a part of this advisory group to share my expertise around wellness technology, wearables, all this kind of stuff, it was really exciting to go into a different industry, so into automotive, which I know very little about. That was really exciting. Again, I learned a lot there, so really enjoyed that project. And I'd say, I guess maybe not so much work related. It's not really work related at all, I suppose. I'm trying to think of something that I've enjoyed as a process. I'd probably say training for my first ever marathon.
Love that.
And I mean, trust me, there was highs and lows, but when I look back, I'm like, that process, when you said project, I'm like, that felt like a project. It felt like a new, almost like unlock of a part of me that I didn't even think was possible. Going, I said 200 meters. So going from a 200 meters to a marathon.
It's a big old difference, that.
Yeah, so that stands out for sure.
Amazing. And do you prefer training for a marathon or training for 200?
Oh, I'd say right now 200.
And do you prefer competing in marathon or 200?
Oh, definitely 200. I can't compete in a marathon.
It's also over so much faster.
Yeah.
Like 200, you're done within what? I don't know what you used to run it in, but you know.
It's over pretty quick.
Seconds.
Although 200 is so painful because, I mean, you'll know, you run the 200 like it's a 100. Like, it's just pain. But the reason I say that I would never be competing at all in a marathon is because even though I've done so many endurance races, I think today I've only done 3 marathons, but I think today I've probably done 30 half marathons. Like, I've done a lot of endurance races.
Yeah.
But I'm not good at endurance running. I'm not made for it genetically. I don't excel. I'm never somebody who you're going to look at the times and go, wow, she's a great runner. I do it for lots of different reasons. But it's interesting because when you've got kids and they look up to you and they think that you're cool and great and good at everything, which at the moment I think the kids still do. I remember my son saying to me before, last time I did the London Marathon, he was like, good luck, Mum. He was like, I hope you win.
Oh, I love him.
For the London Marathon. I was like, thanks. I hope I make it to the end, but
That's
cool.
so cute. What was your biggest rookie error during your first ever marathon?
You know what? I have told this story, but I'll keep, because this is still the quick fire bit.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm long-winded. So the biggest rookie error was not learning how to fuel, not just on the race day, but in all of the training. My first ever marathon, what was I thinking? Out running in these streets for hours on end, not fueled. I just never fueled properly. I always had a fear back then. This is years ago. When did I do this race? It must be coming up to like 10 years ago. I always had a fear of like, you know, needing the toilet or like having my stomach wouldn't really be settled. So therefore I thought the best way to avoid that is to just not eat anything fast. Fasted training. What the heck? So I did so much fasted training. I think as a result, my body was probably like just really weak actually. I look back at a video that I have of the London Marathon, the first one, and I look so weak. I just look like this little skinny thing. And on the day I didn't fuel hardly at all. Like looking back, I'm like, how did I? No wonder it was so painful. And once I hit the wall, I'm telling you, the wheels fell off. Like I'm talking mentally, physically, it was game over at mile 18.
God.
And you got 8 miles to go.
You got a long way to go.
You got a long way to go. And there's only so much, you know, you can do this, you got this, is going to take you. Like seriously, 8 miles of cramps and just no fuel, like running on empty, battery on 0. So I would learn that the hard way. It was so painful. It was so traumatic. I remember thinking at mile 22, I think I saw my sister there and I said to her, I will never do this again. And I remember saying to her, like, I was trying to explain to her, like, the physical and mental torture that was in. And I said to her, this is worse than childbirth.
Really?
She was like, okay, keep going.
What do you say to that?
I just remember, I just wanted her to understand. I was like, you don't understand, like, because I wasn't fueled. And I genuinely think it just comes down to that. Yeah, I mean, ask anyone to go and run 26 miles without fuel. Like, what was I thinking? I was so naive, but I didn't know everything. And also now there's so much education and information, even just online, around how to train for endurance races. We've got a lot more, I think, just shared awareness of this is so much more information now. And I think hopefully people have access to the right information that's science backed, and they're not just, you know, I think that I was just making it up basically. I was just trial and error on myself.
Winging it.
Absolutely winging it. Yeah.
On the flip side, what is your favourite run to date?
Oh, okay, that's an easy one. So my favourite run, it was actually a race, was the Barbados half marathon.
Oh, love
It's
this.
incredible for lots of reasons. So basically, Barbados has a weekend called Run Barbados Weekend. And I think within that weekend, there's a 1 mile, a 5K, a 10K, a half, and a full marathon. And so the whole island essentially comes out to cheer, to watch, to support. The kids do a race, and it's just the energy. You start really early to try and beat the heat, but I mean, it gets hot. So I think you get to the race village at around 5:30 in the morning. It's pretty dark. And then you start running. Obviously, the sun's coming up, that Barbados sun, the heat, it just hits you. But along the course, there's steel pans, there's people cheering, and there's little hydration stations where there's rum shots.
Oh, I love this.
So you might-
Such a vibe.
You might think you're picking up water and it's a shot of rum.
Oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the kind of race that I feel like a lot of people could get on board with. Particularly for your first half, that would be such a fun way to enter the world of running.
It would, but I'd say I saw a lot of burnt people at the finish line, and also throughout the rest of the day, because obviously you can tell people are there for the race. I just remember walking past people and going, oh, and they're just like that Barbados sun. I think because the race is in December, so if you're coming from the UK and you just land and you out there, I saw a lot of people on the flight home who were looking like lobsters.
Not good. That's not a look, is it?
SPF.
Yeah. Which woman would you say you admire the most currently, and why?
Such great questions to start us off with. I am going to name a wonderful woman, friend, mentor, whatever you would call her, called Aisha Mackenzie. So this woman, she is so incredible, and I'm really fortunate that our paths crossed years and years ago when I was about 17, and I just moved to London. I think I'd been in London for like a year. Actually, we might talk about this, but yeah, I left home at 16 and moved to London. So I met her when I was about 17, and she is the founder of multiple agencies. So she has a dance agency, a modeling agency. She's incredible. And I really kind of, when I first met her, I used to, those people who have so much presence and energy that when they come into a room, you kind of go, oh, it's Aisha. I used to be like, oh my gosh. And so I really looked up to her. I actually joined her agency because I was a professional dancer. So I joined her agency, and I actually, this is so bizarre telling you this now sitting here, the Nike sign. The first job I ever did for Aisha was actually a Nike runway. It was like a fashion show where they wanted dancers.
I loved it.
So that was that. But anyway, so I met her, and she's now, after I think almost 20 years of being someone who I've looked towards as a mentor and as a role model in so many ways, as a black woman in business, as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as a mother. She's just an incredible woman. She lifts other women. She's kind of shown me what's possible when you really have the support and encouragement of other powerful, successful women.
I mean, I would love to, we are probably going to touch on this a little bit more later, because that is a big old topic that I want to tap into.
All right.
But how would you define wellness?
If I say to a room full of people when I'm speaking on stage, raise your hand if you want to have more energy, pretty much everybody's hand would go up. Everybody wants to have the energy, because whatever you're trying to do, pursue, whether it's your career, personal, professional, fitness, we all need the energy to be able to do it. And some things give us energy, some things take away our energy. It doesn't always, not always the obvious things, the stuff that we kind of focus on, I suppose, in the fitness and health industry around nutrition and training. But as we know, some of the things that give us the most energy might be our relationships, it might be music, it might be alcohol. In some settings, there's things that can just, the kind of colour and variety of life, I think, is what gives you energy. So for me, that's wellness. It has to include all of the colour, all of the richness. It can't be binary.
And as someone who is so good at helping other people with their wellness and elevating their lives, what is the most common question you tend to get asked?
Okay, it's not necessarily wellness related, but without a doubt, the question that I get asked the most is, how do you do it all? And the first thing I always say to people is, well, I don't. I think that's, the first thing to note. But what I mean when people ask me this question, what I think they mean is they'll see me doing lots of different things, whether that's within my career, within my life. That might be, okay, you're a mother, but also you're an entrepreneur, and then also you've just published a book, and then, oh my gosh, you just said you did a marathon. So people are like, how do you do it all? And it's this idea that we can do everything at the same time. And what I will always say to people is, firstly, I don't do it all at all. I really don't. I certainly don't do it all on my own. But I don't do it all at the same time. So whoever you're looking to, if it's, someone in your industry, someone in your career, if you're looking to someone and going, wow, like, how does that person do it all? Really zoom out, and you might be seeing snapshots of things. So it's April, and then you're seeing something from January, and then last summer, but you just see it all condensed together. So we tend to look at other people's lives and think that they're doing everything at once. But actually, most people, even if they're doing multiple projects, the way it works for me anyway is that I'm going deep on one thing, and that's the priority for a set amount of time before I go on to the next thing. I'm not someone who necessarily, I don't think this spinning loads of plates, I might wear multiple hats, but never at the same time. So yeah, so that's always the question. It's not, like I said, it's not wellness related. It's certainly not something that I would advocate, but it's just if I'm really honest, that is the question that I probably get asked every single week. Yeah.
Do you feel like people are wanting to do more, or feeling like there's a pressure to be doing more?
I think maybe both. I think some people do want to do more, and they're like, oh, I want to fit this in, or I want to try that, which is great. I'm an encourager. I'll say, figure it out, go for it. But I think maybe there is a bit of a pressure, for people to now feel like actually doing one thing isn't enough. I think so many of us, of course, like I said, looking at, you can do so much. So therefore, in this modern world where there's so much access, so much availability, there's so much abundance of choice, it's hard to figure out, okay, the idea of picking one thing or two things, or, having to kind of say no to things is hard, right? It's especially for people who are ambitious and productive, there's so many options available. So yeah, I'll always encourage people to do more, but I think not at the same time. Just let your, like, go deep on something and be like, this is the season that I am training for this race, and I'm going to have to, like I mentioned, compromises when I was writing the book. I'm going to have to not be here, there and everywhere, because right now this word deadline or this marathon, whatever it is, that's the priority. And just knowing that as well is quite freeing, because you give yourself a break to be like, oh, I don't have to also be doing this at the same time. But then the next season, you might have to shift your focus to something else.
Do you think there's almost a fear in people of doing one thing and only one thing? Because when we look back at grandparents' generations, they were in the same job for their entire career, whereas now people jump around a lot of the time. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but do you think there's almost a fear of failure, maybe, that if they do one thing and they don't execute it to the highest level possible, well, it was a waste of time and they're a failure, or a fear of missing out? Where do you think that might come from?
Oh gosh, well, it's definitely nuanced depending on the person. I know that probably later on we're going to talk about the most recent book, Decisions That Matter, and this idea comes up a lot within the book. So why is it so hard for us to choose this career or this house or this partner? And it's because of this abundance of choice. So for some, yes, that fear of missing out, or I call it FOBO, fear of a better option.
I like that.
Fear of a better option. That keeps people stuck, because the idea of being satisfied with one thing when something else better might be around the corner, I think is a modern day challenge that plagues us all, because of the amount of access we have to seeing other people's lives. You can see other people's careers, you can see other people's homes, you can see it all, and therefore that idea that something else better might come along is always there in your face. You're always seeing it. So like you said, our grandparents' generation, even if you go back 50 years, so 1975, exactly as you said, you might have one career that you pursue for 30 or 40, 50 years. People lived in one house and they just live in that house, and they might pay off their mortgage and live in that house forever. And we know that the modern world is very different to that. So the idea of changing things constantly, it can be more exciting. It can give us that adrenaline rush of new is better. The grass is greener. You can just move around. There's just so much more optionality. But unfortunately, the data supports this. It's actually making us less satisfied with whatever it is we finally choose, the more options we have. So the more options you have, the less satisfied you'll be with the final choice. And it's tough. So you've got to kind of, I guess if it's a career specific thing like that, like doing one thing, I also talk about this idea of chaotic ambition. And this was actually recently, I wrote an article for Substack, and I wrote it and I shared it, and I was like, okay, cool. But so many people got in touch and said, this is me. You've just described me. You've just described my brain and my life. And what I was saying in this article, chaotic ambition, is that for a lot of people who are good at lots of things, and I'm sure you're probably one of those people, you probably know people they're good at multiple things. So being good at multiple things is a blessing and a curse. Because if you're just good at one thing, like you said, that's your talent, that's your area of interest, that's your expertise, that's your thing. But for many ambitious, productive people now, if you're good at multiple things, you can have a side hustle, you can do a bit of this, you can start that, you can kind of get stuck in the new starting exploration phase and never go deep on anything, which some people would say, well, that's cool, have variety. As I said, I've had a very unconventional and multifaceted career journey. But there has been like a consistent thread throughout it. But I think for some people, if they're constantly changing and, they can start something new because they're talented, they're smart, they can learn new things quickly, they can adapt quickly, you can be in that exploration phase, that starting 0 to 1 for a decade or more. You can just keep doing that. And I think it's a trap that so many people fall into, so many really talented, smart, creative people, because we now have so much choice. So I guess the challenge there is to think, okay, if you are talented, you're naturally talented, you can learn things quickly, you're very ambitious, this chaotic ambition, if you were to kind of try to bring all that into one area of focus for a significant amount of time, so you could define that as a year, let's say, how much progress could you make? How much of your potential could you reach if you went all in? And it's not to say, I think it's great to, try different things and be multifaceted. I don't think we have to, stay in our lane or pick and stick at all. But I think for a significant amount of time, putting all of that energy, all of that talent, all of that drive into one thing, the results will be incredible. So
so much of this sounds like it's to do with the person's mindset. What does mindset mean to you?
Mindset to me means the ideas and the beliefs that occupy your thoughts. The ideas, the beliefs, the things that you believe to be true about yourself, about your life, about the reality that you experience, that to me is your mindset. And I do believe that we have huge agency about our beliefs, about our mindset, the words and the phrases, the things that we tell ourselves about our lives, about ourselves, what's possible for ourselves, what's possible for our lives. I think we have huge agency over that. And once you realize, actually, your mindset can be such an unlock, or it can be a prison. It can hold you back. It can put barriers around you that tell you you can't, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not fit enough, you're too old, you're too young. All of those barriers will just keep you stuck in the same place. But once you recognize those are just barriers, those are just words, phrases, beliefs, you can start to overcome them. You can start to break them down. That sounds so cheesy, but I've done it. My whole entire life I've done it. And I don't think I realized at a young age that I was doing that.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, what was your mindset like as a kid?
Oh my gosh. I laugh because I had radical self-belief, so much ambition and confidence. And sometimes I'm like, I want to get that back. You know, I think as you get older, the world can kind of bring you down a peg. The world can put you in your place. The world can tell you, actually, you are a woman and you are a woman of color and you are this and you can't that. And you can start to internalize and believe those things. But I think as a very young girl, I didn't know any of those things. I just had radical self-belief. If I had an idea, if I saw something, I wanted to do it. I wanted to emulate. I remember like listening to a lot of music. So I love music growing up. I still do, but it was very different then. You know how now we've got so much choice. Back then it was like you had your CDs. You know, I'm old, so I had CDs and a CD player, and I would play those CDs on repeat. So I remember having, you know, Destiny's Child album, Usher album, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson. I would listen, and I mentioned, you know, that I was in a musical. Did I mention that?
You haven't yet. No, you mentioned you danced.
Okay, yes. Well, I was. So I was a performer, singer, dancer, all of that. But I was very, like, I guess, self-taught, you know. My mum was a single mum. I lived up north with my mum and my siblings. I didn't have, like, access to the best, you know, dance schools or singing teachers or piano lessons. I literally was, you know, in my bedroom, like, belting out these Whitney Houston songs, like, watching Michael Jackson videos and just replicating what I saw, basically. Repetition again and again and again and again till I nailed the steps, till I knew the routines. Like, that's what I did. But I think going back to mindset, I never thought anything was out of reach. I never thought anything was unrealistic. You know, now we might hear words like manifestation and visualization. I didn't know those words. I wouldn't have even called it that. But I think as a young girl, I was doing that every day. I was visualizing things for myself for the future. I would maybe call it daydreaming then. I would daydream. I think my teachers would probably say that, like, oh, she's, you know, I said such big ideas. I was so curious. I was like, why not? Like, how about that? Why not do this? Like, I just daydream about, and probably explains why I left home, you know, at 16 and moved to London, because I was like, why not? I had a little suitcase. I had a Christina Aguilera poster.
Oh my God, dying. Love
literally,
it.
like, since the book came out, because I wrote about this in the introduction, then people have been like, of course you had a Christina Aguilera poster, because that just goes to show, like, the things that I thought were essential at 16 years old, bizarre. But I got a coach from Leeds to London, and I arrived at London Victoria, and that was it. I was like, I am going to move to a big city. I've got big ambition. And I was naive and I was ambitious. And I think, like I said, that was 20 years ago. And as much as I'm still probably ambitious, I just think that, yeah, I sometimes look back and I think, gosh, you owe it to that little girl to remember that fire and remember that kind of I can do anything mindset, because like I said, the world puts limits on you, right? And you start to become more self-aware, become more self-conscious, you become more aware of critics. You know, it's hard to put your ideas out into the world, whether it's re-recording podcasts, writing books. You're putting yourself in an arena, and I think that can make us shrink. You know,
I feel like with kids a lot of the time there's like a lack of awareness of how feeling vulnerable can feel. Essentially, like, you put yourself out there, you're so vulnerable, you're on the world stage for people to pick you apart if they should choose to. But as a kid, you just go, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it. And it's and the curious side. I love it when people describe themselves as curious. I just think it's one of the best traits to have. What were some of the other traits that you feel, looking back now, that you had developed by the age of 16 that then helped you when you got to London? You had some challenging times. 16 is young to move out of home. But what were these traits that helped you through those hard times?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think some of it was just due to my circumstance and experience. So I'm an older sibling, and as I mentioned, having a single mum, it meant that I had to take on a lot of responsibility. So I think I grew up with responsibility and being very capable, and I don't think I realised, I guess everyone thinks their life is normal, right? So everyone thinks their life's normal. So maybe I thought it was normal when I was maybe 12 years old, 13 years old, that I could cook the dinner, do the washing, get the bus to school, take care of my younger siblings. I thought that was normal. That's just what you do. Now, as a mother of an almost 14-year-old, I'm like, oh, wow, because everyone's life experiences are so uniquely just so different, but mine definitely meant that I felt really capable because I always had to figure things out. It was like, okay, if you miss the bus, how are you getting to school? Like, you got to figure it out. If something went wrong or something was broken, I remember being like, I need to fix it. I couldn't just replace it. So I'd be like, I actually remember like taking like a plug apart and taking the fuse out and being like, I need to fix this. So yeah, I think I became very capable, and that I think gives you a different kind of confidence. You have a different level of confidence when you know that you can rely on yourself. And at 16, again, to move to London, yeah, of course it was naive, but also I just had this self-belief, like, I'll figure it out. I didn't need to like, who do I call if it goes wrong? I was just like, I'll figure it out. Yeah, and I think that confidence, I think sometimes, I talk about confidence can come after the decision, not before. So people might be like, how do you have the confidence to make a bold decision? Sometimes you make the decision, you learn, you adapt, and that breeds confidence. That's real confidence, because like, oh, I figured it out before, so maybe I can do it again. And again, just going back to school, when you say what are the traits, I've always been an extrovert. I've always loved to talk. I've always loved to ask questions, probably at school maybe too much, but I've always loved to, I've always been curious. I've always been interested in understanding why is it, okay, some people will experience that, and same thing happens. Some people it's brilliant, for some people it's terrible. Some people, for example, adversity crushes them, it breaks them. For other people, the same adversity is the making of them, makes them stronger, makes them succeed. I was always trying to understand, well, why? What is it? Is it genetic? Is it environment? Even between my siblings, we're all different, and I was always trying to figure that out. I don't think I was a voracious learner when I was young, but I certainly am now. And I think leaving school, again, these limits or boundaries or barriers, I always thought my sister was the academic one. I was like, she's the smart one. And maybe that's what I was told by my mom, or it was like, she's the smart one, she's the academic one. And I wasn't like a book reader. But once I figured out how I learn, which is mostly audio, this was, again, years ago, I have learned so much. I listen to probably a book a week on Audible. I listen to podcasts. I've done, whether it's online trainings, coaching, courses, I've done so much learning, and I plan to continue to do that. So I would consider myself to be a voracious learner. And people will say, well, how did you learn that or figure that out? Or everything from, entrepreneurship, business. There's so many things that I just went deep on and said, right, well, I'm going to listen to the best 20 books I can find on this topic, on finance or on any topic, because it's out there now. You can just listen to it. You can write notes. You can listen to the best minds in the world, because they're all on podcasts. They've all written books. So I think once I figured out, okay, I learn through audio. I retain so much of the information that I hear through audio. Maybe it goes back to that, singing and dance and music. I can retain 90% of something that I hear, but if I read it, I might only retain 50% of it. So the more efficient thing for me to do is listen, write notes, and that was a real unlock. So yeah, so when you ask about the different traits, I think some are personality, some are your DNA, some are, you pick different things up along the way, but those I think were kind of, I guess, the biggest pieces of the puzzle.
How did you then step into the world of wellness after all of that?
Gosh, oh my gosh, this podcast we're going to need longer. Because I guess up till now as well, I've really got a big smile on my face because I'm talking to you, and so many of these things, I've got so much, I guess, just great energy about. But I think this is probably one of the only things that was just incredibly challenging, and there's no way to kind of, I guess, soften that. And that is that I mentioned I was in a musical. I was newlywed. I was newly pregnant. And my husband at the time was a young, fit, healthy guy. And he's a PE teacher, and he was just, you know, just a young, fit, healthy guy in his 20s. But unfortunately, one night when we went to bed, he suffered a spontaneous brain hemorrhage. And there was no reason for it. He hadn't been unwell. He hadn't had, you know, a head injury or anything like that. But in that one night, that one moment, essentially, my entire life changed. It really changed. Not like, oh, my life changed. Practically everything changed. So I had left the theatre that day. I was in We Will Rock You, the Queen musical. You know the one at Tottenham Court Road, the Dominion Theatre. And I was in that musical. I'd been in the musical for about a year and a half, maybe. And that night, because what typically happens in West End shows, for anyone that doesn't know, is that you do a 12-month contract. At the end of the 12 months, you might stay in the show, or you might go on to something else. So I was in the middle of my contract. And so most people, if they get to the end of the contract, they know they're leaving. You'll have your final show, you'll do the bow, you have make a moment of it. But I was halfway through my contract, and I left the theatre that day and said, see you tomorrow to the band and the cast and the crew. And I never went back, because that night when he had the brain hemorrhage, essentially we went to a neurology ward of a hospital in my pajamas, and we were there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
2
my
weeks.
God.
Yeah. And I was pregnant.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So without going, you can imagine the next couple of years were really just, everything changed, really, really challenging in many ways. But at the time, it wasn't like a light bulb moment that was like, I'm going to, dive into the world of wellness. Like, it wasn't even on my radar. But I was, again, curious learner. I was trying to understand, like, why does this happen? You don't just, you did just basically go to bed one night and bam, your whole life's different. And it made me really curious about, okay, sleep, brain health, nutrition, stress, the impact of grief, loss, like all of these things, the mind-body connection, trauma, all of these things that we don't have all the answers to. Even now, see, doctors, they don't have all the answers to, but we have a best guess, and we have lots of different pieces of this puzzle. So I guess, that, I suppose, initially it started with, after my son was born, and I was like, okay, I need to work. I'd always worked. Obviously, having been a dancer, you know the body. So it started really with that. It was like, okay, let me become qualified as a personal trainer, because a lot of people were asking me. I mean, I was young. I was like early 20s. I just had a baby. I was very I've always been very athletic and very active. So I feel like I just had, I guess the aesthetic of like, a dancer or an athlete. So people would say to me at like the baby swimming with my 6-month-old baby, they'd be like, how do you get abs? It would just be like a random, and obviously it sounds silly, but I was like, I can't just be telling people like, well, do this exercise or do this thing. So I thought I should probably train and become qualified. So I became qualified as a personal trainer. I started in the fitness industry very much on coaching and training in the body, but very quickly, me being me as well, it was just so much more than that. And you'll be able to relate to this, but it was so much more than just, okay, what exercise are we doing for which muscle? There's all those things that go into it, which is mindset, which is motivation, which is, how am I going to motivate this person? Because they're very different to this person, and what's going to help them is going to be different for them. So it was very much, again, thinking about behavior and habits and goal setting, and kind of went on from there. But I'd say how many years on? Almost 15 years on, I guess. Lots changed in that time. So I've worked across a variety of things now, from working at a startup, working with wellbeing technology, different apps and development, wearables, apparel, all sorts of things, to now doing brand advisory for people to understand more, not just about the wellness industry, so all of the different parts of the wellness industry, but also wellness consumers and trends, again, behaviors, patterns, and kind of understanding different segments and what they care about. So it's led me on to doing some really interesting stuff. But when I go back all that way, it was really that kind of my ex-husband being so unwell and just coming out of nowhere that made me realize, wow, your whole life can change in an instant. When it comes to your health. Mm-hmm. There's nothing really else that, like, yes, money, you can lose money, get money, but ultimately if someone, health is the one thing, it can literally change everything in your life overnight. And I think that seed was planted. I just wanted to know more, I suppose. Maybe there's a bit of control in there as well around, like, how can we prevent these kind of things? if possible at all. But most people, if you talk to them about their goals, they might have 5 goals, 10 goals, 15 goals. But if you ask someone who's unwell, they have 1 goal.
Yeah.
They have 1 goal. It's to be well, it's to be healthy, and to be, so that's, I guess probably influenced a lot of my own decisions since then.
I was going to say, how has your outlook on life changed since that night?
I think initially it changed in 2 ways. One is, I guess I had a lot of fear. I'd never really been a person in my life to experience anxiety or fear. I just kind of was living my life. But it was the first time I've ever experienced real anxiety, and I suppose like PTSD, because the brain hemorrhage caused him to have a seizure. And I was there, obviously, as the responder. So things like, you call 999, they tell you what to do. For anyone who's ever been in that situation, especially for someone that you love and care about, it's just so traumatic. But then it happened as a result of that one time. He developed epilepsy. So it meant it happened again, like multiple times. So therefore, that kind of thing that you're afraid of happens again. So if someone said to you, like, after, I don't know, an accident or something, they're like, well, don't worry, it will never happen again. Whereas when you're living with a condition that could and probably will happen again, for a while I was in like high alert. So for many people who, if you might have heard about the kind of fight or flight response, everyone's heard of that now. So the fight or flight response is our body, being on high alert, ready, listen out for danger. I was kind of stuck like that for a while. So that was obviously the first bit. But it also impacted me in a way that I started to really live my life with a sense of urgency. Nothing is given, tomorrow is not given. You don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So you have to make the most and do something now. Don't put it off, don't wait. So I really became like, okay, I'm going to be that person. If I want to book something, I'm booking it. If I'm going to, run my first marathon, I'm going to run the marathon. I just started to really think. And again, there's 2 sides to the coin. It can be detrimental because suddenly you're like, I've got to do everything and nothing's enough. And, where do we draw the line? But I think for a few years, I definitely was like, oh my gosh, we've got to live. It was like this idea of like, it was almost like this, kind of, again, it sounds cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason.
Very true.
It was like this idea of I've got to squeeze the most out of life. And I definitely, I think, lived like that for a while. I think now maybe, hopefully, I've found a little bit more balance. But yeah, it just impacted me in lots of ways.
And it was kind of from that moment that you got more into your endurance outdoor running, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was it about running that helped you through that time?
It was a few things. One was the solitude, because for anyone when they become a new mum, you lose solitude. You've got this little person all the time, which is amazing and a blessing and it's wonderful, but they're there all the time. And I just remember being like, wow, like you can't even go to the bathroom without your little like shadow or your little duckling. I think it's called duckling syndrome or something. It's when you just see like, little ones, toddlers, they just follow you around the house. So it was partly for that. I think I needed solitude. I needed to just have 20 minutes or half an hour by myself where I didn't feel responsible for someone else. And that wasn't just for the little one, but it was also that feeling of responsibility that I then had for my ex-husband, because epilepsy is a difficult thing, and it's kind of like every time I was not with him I'd be worried, is he going to be okay, like should I get back? So it kind of felt like for a while it was my 20 minutes of solitude to go out in the morning and be like, you know what, everyone's fine. They were usually still in bed. I used to go very early in the morning and I'd be like, everyone's asleep, everyone's fine, you can have your half an hour. So it was solitude. Then I guess the reason it became endurance was maybe it's just part of my personality to go, hey, I never thought as a sprinter that I could run 5K. Like, no way. And then you run 5K and you do it a few times and you start to push yourself to think, maybe I can run 5K a little bit faster. Maybe I can run 10K. And it's just that kind of, I guess it's in me to kind of challenge myself to see what's possible. It was also a really exciting time. This is back, like I said, I'm getting old. This was like, I don't know, this was so long ago. And now it's so different. You think about things like social media and running and how it's like there's all these communities. But really, it was like the start of that. So I was lucky, I guess, with timing, serendipity, that when I first started running and getting into my running era, like things like Run Dem Crew were, just bubbling up in London. And also I was part of the London Midnight Runners. When it first started, there was like 8 of us and we would meet, and I think now there's like hundreds in this running crew in London, and it's global. So Midnight Runners is now a global running community in different countries around the world. When I started working with other brands, they were doing run clubs. It just was a really exciting time. Women's Health magazine. There were so many things that were happening for women specifically as well to run and to kind of be, it felt like this new like unlock again of like a new part of my persona or personality, because before that I was like, okay, you're a mum or you're a dancer or I don't know, it just felt like this like I'm a runner. Like it just was like this whole new thing. It was really exciting. I was meeting new people. I was getting to, you know, just really cool shit. Like I was like, I can go and do this race in another city, somewhere I've never been to before. So it really kind of took off. There was so many parts of it that I enjoyed. The community part, meeting people. I've met friends through the running community that I'm still friends with to this day. And it's just a different kind of friendship, you know, it's a different kind of thing, that experience that you go through together. So yeah, I loved running. I still do. I'm not doing as many endurance races at the moment, but yeah, the solitude piece at the start. And then, ironically, I suppose the opposite of that is the community piece that followed.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I needed, at first it was running on my own, and then suddenly running with others.
People around me.
Yeah.
In hindsight, do you feel like you ever fell into the trap of overtraining and thinking that more is more?
Ooh, okay. Maybe more is more. Maybe with the whole, you know, like, yeah, if I can do a half, maybe I'll do a marathon. Maybe I'll do it. Because in reality, I've got no business running marathons, like I said. It's not... It's just I don't know if I'm built for it, but I don't think I've ever done the overtraining thing, simply because of my life. So having, you know, whether it's kids, different responsibilities, I've just never been, you know, I look at some people, again, social media can be great, but I do see some people's like training or their what appears to be their training and appears to be their life, and I'm like, wow, because it's such a big time commitment to be able to do. Okay, they've got their 5 runs a week, they've got their strength training, they've got their Pilates, they've got their I don't know, all these different track sessions, sessions, and I'm like, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I don't think, because of my lifestyle, that I was ever able to be that person that was like, I've never trained 7 days a week. I don't think I've ever trained 5 days a week. I think I had to be really efficient with my time and be like, okay, if I've taken 2.5 hours on a Saturday to carve out for this long run, that's it, you know, that's the time I've got, and that's it. So yeah, so I don't think I fell into the overtraining, but I think we can all be guilty of the more is more, or just thinking that what we're doing isn't enough.
How do you help change people's narratives? Like if they have this belief system that more is more, how have you helped shift people's mindset around that?
Okay, so I think it's really important to look at athletes, you know, the athlete. So many of us look at athletes for lots of reasons, not just when it comes to fitness and health, but also things around mindset and just achieving something incredible. Now, no athlete will just train and compete. They'll train, compete, and recover. And recover is such a big part of it. So I think I've always known that, and I've always kind of just thought, well, that's part of it. That's just part of the puzzle. It's part of, you know, I'm quite systematic, I think, with most things in life, and data driven. So it's just part of the puzzle. It's like you can't just take out one of the elements. It's like 3 legs of a stool. You can't just take one away. It's not going to work. So I think I've always thought about it like that. It's not a hierarchy of like the training, and then I've always just seen it as that kind of 3 legs of a stool. So that's how hopefully I would encourage others to think about it, which is you need all 3 to be able to perform at your best, to be able to maintain, to have longevity in anything, a career, a sport, your vitality and physicality as you age. If you want longevity and you want performance that's going to last, you need all of it. So I've always always viewed it in that way. And obviously we now know that from a wellness industry perspective, the recovery market is booming. So that's obviously, you know, we've got recovery technologies, we've got different recovery tools, we've got all the apps and I suppose wearables to tell us and monitor our own bodies to see, oh, actually the impact of training or the impact of sleep deprivation, and to look at how much even just simple things like your HRV and your heart rate, how they're impacted when you have inadequate recovery or when you prioritize recovery. So I think now, hopefully, with those kind of things, those dashboards, I think people really start to see, oh, actually, yeah, when I get enough sleep or when I, you know, take the time to rest and recover, it really pays off. Yeah.
And how do you think social media does impact our society? Do you think it's net positive? Like, what are some of the things you're seeing, I guess, not only in the wellness space, but from as a consumer and also as someone who puts a lot of content out that's really beneficial for people? What is your view on social media right now?
Oh, gosh. What is my view on social media right now? The way I see it is it can be a tool. It's like anything. You can do good or bad with the same tool. I think it's a tool. And I think that unfortunately, so much of the responsibility of that tool is on us. Of course, it's on the companies that create these technologies as well, and things like algorithms and those things, of course, 100%, they need to be considered. But ultimately, what can we do about it right now? The only thing I think I can do about it right now is monitor my own use, is to kind of, observe my own behaviors and think, okay, what's my responsibility when it comes to social media? So I'd say, that's the way I've always seen it, is like, this is a tool. It can be used for good, it could be used for bad, and everything in between. I'm very much, when I say about, agency and choice and decisions, I'm like, I am going to use this tool and create a feed and create, I use it to feel inspired. I use it to follow incredible people, creative people in all sorts of different industries. And I use it for that reason. I'm like, of course, I want to share content as well. It's given me an incredible platform. I think social media has democratized a lot of voices. So I wouldn't have had some of the opportunities that I've had in my life had I not had social media and a community there to kind of say, oh, okay, this person, all these curious ideas that I'm talking about are of interest to others. So that's definitely opened doors for me. And I think maybe if I was born different time, I wouldn't have had those opportunities to publish books and host radio shows and go and speak on stages around the world at tech conferences, because that would not have been available to me. So I'm grateful for that aspect. As a parent, maybe I have a different lens as well. So it's very complex. I'm like kind of looking at that as a parent and a step parent, boys and girls. I take that responsibility on. Again, when I talk about agency, I take that on for young people. So for my children, I'm like, that's my responsibility, actually. It's not for me to say, oh, well, social media and, like I said, the tech companies and the algorithms, like, what can I do as a parent? No, actually, I take that on and say, this is, I'm very much involved. My kids don't have social media, but they do have, phones. So, they can go onto YouTube, for example, but they don't have social media accounts or anything like that. I don't think this is going to be a popular opinion, and I'm sure people will really disagree with me, but I think it's a net positive. I think the access, like I said, the abundance, like being able to find people, like, let's say, for example, again, going back 20 years, 30 years, if you lived in a small town and you were a person of color, a minority person, if you were a queer person, if you were a trans person, if you knew nobody who was like you and you couldn't see people like yourself and you couldn't connect with those people and you couldn't hear people like you or that looked like you, who were confident, who were celebrated, who were joyful. I've seen that in my own life, but also in the lives of my siblings, my friends, people in the community, especially, like I say, people of marginalized groups, queer communities, trans communities, where they have an online community and it is real. It's really real. It's not just, okay, these are just squares online and people. They're real people and they're celebrated and they're joyful and I think they give hope to so many others who might not have those people directly in their lives. So maybe I have a different view on it because of that. I think maybe we've all got biases and things that influence us. Maybe I've been influenced in that way. But I oh gosh, even saying it, I know so many people will be like, is she crazy? Like, net negative? Of course it's net negative. There's all this stuff around, the data around young people and the anxious generation, and isn't it so terrible? Maybe it's just the eternal optimist in me that wants to think that there's a net positive.
But I agree. I think the community aspect of it is brilliant. I think when used wisely and used correctly, and as long as you're taking agency, like you say, and if you feel yourself slipping into comparison, which tends to be pretty awful for us, and you can catch that and you can prevent that by muting, unfollowing, whatever it is. There are also tools on these apps that can prevent you from seeing things that make you feel not so great. How other people treat you is outside of your control, and that's where it becomes negative. But I think you can kind of personalize your social media experience to be positive.
Yeah. When I was in a time in my life when I was trying to get pregnant and it wasn't happening and there was all these complications, it was really difficult. And exactly as you just said, I was following loads of people online who maybe they would just got pregnant, or maybe because of, it's just life. And I remember seeing those posts and, like, whether it was a pregnancy announcement, scan pictures, it was just almost as well. It's like anything. If you say, okay, look for red cars, you'll see red cars everywhere. So suddenly everybody you see is pregnant and this, and it just was so I was like, okay, I need to unfollow. And it was nothing to do with those women. It was nothing to do with them. It wasn't like they're doing anything wrong in sharing their joy. And it was a me thing. I was like, it was self-preservation. I was like, this isn't making you feel good. It's making you feel sad. You're sitting here scrolling. You need to change it up. So that's what I did. Again, I took agency of that. And I didn't blame those people. Again, comparison can be quite, this, the anger is almost like sent to to them. But actually I was like, actually, this isn't, Adrienne, this is a you thing for now, for this season in your life. You need to change this. And I always remember that because I just, people that probably years later I probably followed them again. Yeah. Because I was like, I'm in a different place now and it's cool. But at that time, self-preservation, I was like, you don't need to be seeing that every day. So just, you don't have to, it's not social media's fault. It's not like, isn't social media terrible? It was like, you don't need to be seeing that. So just change it.
Yeah. Change the environment up.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write Decisions That Matter? What was going on in the world that you wanted to address by writing this book?
Yes. Okay. So 5 years ago, we're all in the pandemic, if you can remember it. I mean, it's crazy how different our lives were in the pandemic and how much we've kind of just collectively decided to just forget about it.
Yeah.
So we're just like,
that little thing.
Do you remember that? Do you remember being locked in your house all day? Do you remember having to go out, wear a mask? Like, do you remember like having to literally ask people if they'd been vaccinated, if you were going to go to their house? Like, it was wild, but we've forgotten all of it. But during that time, many people, if they can really try to think back to how you felt at that time, so many people were making big life decisions. They were making changes, or they were at least questioning. They were no longer kind of like going through the motions of life, which is like, this is my job and this is where I live and this is what I do. So many people we heard of the Great Resignation. People were quitting their jobs. People were like, I'm going to move out of the city. I've never wanted to live in a city. I want to live by the beach, or I want to live in the forest. People were changing the way they lived. They were looking at their partners and going, do we still want to write? Do we still want to be together? Is this what we're doing? And those big decisions, I think people finally had the time to reflect on the choices that had led them to the life that they had. So I was delivering some online webinars to different organizations. So it was employees, mostly places that I used to go in and deliver talks, and then they'd say, okay, everyone's locked at home. Can you come and do this virtual thing for us? It was often about, how to optimize your energy, how to structure your day, how to remain motivated, goal setting. And then decision making was kind of this tiny bit at the end, but it resonated with so many people. So many people, they'd send me questions afterwards, or an email or a LinkedIn message to say, hey, thanks so much for the presentation, that decision-making matrix you shared. Can you send that to me? And I was like, okay. So it planted the seed back then. I talked afterwards in the years that followed to different people about the idea. And it was really interesting, actually, because so many people said, you know what, they said, either I've looked for a book about decision-making, and they're all kind of written by similar people. They were kind of felt like they were kind of a bit outdated. Or they said, you know what, it's something that you don't learn at school. It's such a complex topic. So that almost put me off, because I thought, oh gosh, it's going to be such an undertaking to write an entire book about this topic. It's not something you can just, I don't want to write a book that could be a blog post. It needs I need to do the work if I'm going to do justice to this. So so it took 18 months of research and thinking and ideating and testing and reading and all these things that came together. But that seed was really planted, in lockdown, when I think a lot of us looked at our lives and said, do I choose this? Did I, was it because my parents said I was good at it? Was it because it was just the easy option? Was it just the path of least resistance? And actually, I think so many people focused on what matters. The book's called Decisions That Matter. At that time in our lives, people suddenly were like, oh, I figured out what matters to me. But like I said, life goes on. We just forget, everyone's gone back to work, back to the things. I'm sure there are some things, if you think back to lockdown yourself, were there any things there were things that people said, after this is over, I am going to do this. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to go to this place. I'm never going to do this again. And I don't know, sadly, how many people have actioned those goals, those dreams, those ambitions, or whether they've just put them to the side for now, not right now. And maybe they'll never make those changes. Maybe they'll never make those decisions. And inaction and indecision, sadly, is, I think, when we get to the end of our lives, I think that is the thing that people typically have the most regrets about, is inaction.
What is it, do you feel, that it's stopping people from taking action to achieving their goals or doing the things that they want to go and do?
Again, it's complex, because it depends on the person, and the mindset piece probably comes into it. When we talked about what is mindset, our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about what's possible for our lives, only only you, Tess, know what is possible for yourself and your life. I can't tell you. No one can tell you. No one can tell you, you know, there's no way that you could ever do this, or it's definite and guaranteed that you could do that. There's this uncertainty element that we have to kind of wrestle with on a daily basis in life. Uncertainty, like overthinking sometimes, is this idea that we can kind of scenario plan and think our way out and think our way to certainty. We can't. Uncertainty is a part of life. So I think sometimes it's that. It can be perfectionism in people. It can be fear. It can be procrastination, just not now. They're going to do it. Of course, they're going to do it, but I just need to do this first. I've got to keep planning, reading, researching. I'm going to do it when. So unfortunately, maybe it was fortunate for me that I had some of those experiences that I've mentioned today around urgency, around change, around, okay, wow, everything's different. Maybe I've had that kind of, I guess, like shock to the system already. And some people experience that in lockdown. But I think so many people, they know exactly what they want to do. It's not, the indecision isn't because they don't know what to do. It's not because, oh, there's 3 routes, I don't know which way to go. No, most people, they know what they want to do. It's the how that makes them stuck. It's the when, it's all of those things. But I think really, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, damn, like there is something that I do know what I want to do, doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean it's going to feel good. Like making a good decision doesn't always feel good. But if you know what it is, then the time is going to pass, whether you do it or not. Act or don't act. 12 months time, you could still be whatever the date is today. Have a look and see what's the date. 12 months on from today, you could be a year into doing it, or you could still be waiting to start.
Mm-hmm. Knowing everything that you know now and looking back on everything that you've achieved, if you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would it be?
I would tell my younger self that nothing lasts, good or bad. Nothing. However good things are, however bad things are, in the absolute, you know, most challenging times or the absolute high best moments, nothing lasts. And I think knowing that, and I still try to live with that now, but I wish I'd known it sooner, you know. I wish I'd known it sooner, because when things are challenging and tough, and they have been so many times in my life, you don't feel like hearing this kind of conversation, forget it. You know, it's like when things are really, really challenging, you don't think it's going to be, oh, isn't it going to be great? And oh, the silver lining. No, you don't want to hear that. You're like, this is so bad. This is shit. Why? You know what I mean? I don't want to hear that. Positive mindset. No, it's so shit, but it won't last. It won't last. And so also, sadly, when things are amazing and you're flying on cloud 9, life's going to happen and it won't last either. But that's hopefully not a negative place to end. But yeah, hopefully for me, that makes me feel like optimistic, and to make the most of things when you have them, and to know that, yeah, when things are tough, it'll pass.
I love that. Thank you so much. You've been brilliant. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.